Break the one who tries to intimidate you. Chapter 1. The Architecture of Submission and the Will to Power. 1. Phase. The Clash. Narrative. New York. The 60th floor of the glass monolith, Vanguard Holdings. Marcus, a man whose wealth allows him to buy and sell entire governments, sits in a chair upholstered in the leather of a rare buffalo. Before him stands Liam, a brilliant architect whose project Marcus is about to steal. Marcus employs the tactic of visual burning. He looks directly into Liam's pupils without blinking. In ethology, this is referred to as the predatory gaze. Liam feels a lump caught in his throat. Liam, Marcus pronounces the name as if he were tasting cheap wine. Your project. It is not bad, but it lacks what I call greatness. Surely you understand that without my name, this blueprint is merely waste paper. Marcus pauses. He takes an expensive pen and begins to rotate it slowly between his fingers. His movements are perfectly synchronized with the ticking of the clock on the wall. He creates a rhythm to which Liam's brain begins to involuntarily submit. God, he is right. Who am I without him? If I begin to argue now, he will tear up the contract. My hands are shaking. Why is there so little oxygen in this room? I must agree to his terms, otherwise I will lose everything. He looks so monumental, and I am just a clerk with a pencil. Liam's internal monologue turns into a hymn of defeat. Liam swallows hard. His shoulders drop. In parentheses, Marcus notices this fleeting movement of the shoulder girdle. It is the signal of capitulation. The hunt is over. The butchering of the carcass has begun. Of course, Marcus, I value your guidance. What do you suggest changing? Liam commits a fatal error. He asks for advice from the enemy. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. Here we see a classic manifestation of Nietzsche's slave morality. Liam seeks approval from the master instead of dictating his own conditions. The neurochemistry of fear. At the moment Marcus began the psychological pressure, Liam's hypothalamus activated the sympathetic nervous system. Cortisol levels surged to peak values. Cortisol has an unpleasant characteristic. It blocks the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for long-term planning and logic. Liam transitioned into a state of tunnel vision. For his brain, only one reality exists right now. Marcus is a god, and survival depends on his will. Marcus applies cognitive devaluation. By calling the project not bad, he creates a false vulnerability. He does not scold the project, which would provoke a protest. He gives it an average rating, triggering in Liam a desire to prove his worth. This is a trap. As soon as you begin to prove your value to a manipulator, you acknowledge his right to evaluate you. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. To understand why Liam surrendered so easily, let us turn to the theory of learned helplessness by Martin Seligman, 1967. Seligman conducted experiments on dogs. The animals were placed in cages where they received electric shocks from which they could not escape. After some time, when the cage was opened, the dogs did not even attempt to leave. They lay down and whimpered, accepting the pain as an inevitability. Liam is Seligman's dog. Years of work in the corporate hierarchy have taught him that the master, the boss, is always right, and resistance leads to pain, dismissal. His brain has atrophied the muscle of protest. He does not see the open door of his freedom because he is accustomed to invisible electric shocks. 4. Phase. Counter-strike. The lesson. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in The Will to Power, "What is falling, that one should also push." This is not a call to cruelty. It is a call to the destruction of weakness within oneself. To break Marcus, Liam had to kill the slave within himself. Lesson number 1. Ignore the evaluation. Question the right to judge. Strategic solution. Liam should have used the tactic of radical pragmatism. Breaking contact. Shift the gaze from Marcus's eyes to his hands. This deprives the manipulator of visual control. Status inversion. Instead of making excuses, Liam should have said, "Marcus, your evaluation of not bad is subjective and not supported by market data. My project will bring the company 40% profit. If you lack greatness, buy a painting. If you need money, sign the blueprints, or I shall offer them to your competitors in 10 minutes. This is a demonstration of the will to power. You do not ask for a seat at the table. You declare that the table belongs to you because you created its value." 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. The office smells of ozone and old money, that specific scent of expensive leather folders and stagnant air. The hum of the city outside the window seems like the sound of surf breaking against the inaccessible cliff of the office. Marcus looks motionless, like a statue, but if one looks closely at his right hand, one can notice how his knuckles have turned slightly white as they grip the pen. He is also afraid. He is afraid that Liam will realize the truth. Marcus is merely a parasite who lives off the genius of others. And if Liam leaves, Marcus will turn into a void. Chapter 2. The Trap of Social Approval and Master Morality. 1. Phase. The Clash. Narrative. New York, Upper East Side. The Contemporary Art Gallery, Sterling and Company. A private preview for investors is underway. Julian, the gallery owner and a master of social engineering, stands in the center of a circle of influential figures. At the center of attention is Evelyn, a young curator who prepared the exhibition. Julian places his hand on Evelyn's shoulder. This touch seems friendly, but his fingers squeeze her shoulder slightly more than necessary, pinning her in place. Evelyn has done curious work, Julian says, emphasizing the word curious so that it sounds like a veiled insult. Although her commitment to classical forms in our age of digital chaos seems a bit naive. Do you not agree, gentlemen? He sweeps his gaze over those present. The investors, catching the rhythm of the leader, begin to nod understandingly and exchange chuckles. Evelyn feels heat rushing to her face. She finds herself in a ring of alienation. Everyone is looking at me. If I start defending the project now, I will look like a girl making excuses. But if I remain silent, I admit that I am a non-entity. My heart is pounding as if I were a hunted wolf. Why are they all laughing? I worked 16 hours a day. Julian promised support, and now he is feeding me to these sharks. Evelyn takes a deep breath, but her voice trembles. Julian, we discussed the concept, and you agreed that— "Oh, darling," he interrupts her with a fake smile. "We all sometimes agree with children so as not to upset them." In parentheses, Julian uses the technique of infantilization. He deprives Evelyn of her status as an adult specialist, turning her into an unreasonable child in the eyes of the crowd. 2. Phase, psychological X-ray, analysis. Here Julian applies Nietzsche's concept of master morality against slave morality. He behaves like a master who sets the values himself. What is naive and what is grand? Evelyn, on the other hand, is trapped in slave morality. She seeks justice, sympathy, and loyalty to agreements. But in the world of predators, these categories do not exist. Psychological mechanism, social proof. Julian uses the group as a resonator for his dominance. When the group nods, Evelyn's brain reads this as social death. According to research by neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman, Social rejection activates the same areas in the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, as real physical pain. Evelyn is in physical pain right now, and this pain paralyzes her will. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. To understand why the crowd so easily took Julian's side, let us turn to Solomon Asch's experiment, 1951. A group of people was shown 3 lines of different lengths and asked to find the one that matched the reference line. All participants except one were Confederates and intentionally gave the wrong answer. In 75% of cases, the subject, seeing the unanimity of the group, agreed with the obvious lie, fearing to become an outcast. In the gallery, the investors are participants in the Asch experiment. It does not matter to them whether Evelyn's exhibition is good. It matters to them to be on the side of the strong one, Julian, to maintain their status in the pack. Evelyn is alone against the consensus of reality. 4. Phase, counter-strike. The lesson. Friedrich Nietzsche asserted, "What is good? All that enhances the feeling of power, the will to power, and power itself in man." To survive, Evelyn must stop being good and become powerful. Lesson number 2. Shatter the mirror of approval. If the crowd is against you, lead the attack on the crowd. Strategic solution. Evelyn should have applied the technique of psychological Aikido and the Nietzschean principle of self-overcoming. Breaking contact. Step sharply to the side, forcing Julian's hand to slip off her shoulder. This is a physical symbol of defiance. Inversion of values. Instead of defending, she should attack the taste of the crowd itself. Julian, I understand that for people accustomed to digital fast food, the depth of these works may be exhausting. Greatness always requires effort, which not everyone is capable of. If the gentlemen investors are looking for something simpler, they sell excellent posters across the street. Here, however, we are speaking of art that will outlive us all. This returns Evelyn to the status of an expert. She does not make excuses. She passes judgment on their ignorance. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. The gallery smells of expensive champagne, oil paint, and Evelyn's cold sweat. The spotlights seem too bright, searing. The gallery walls, painted a dazzling white, press in on her from all sides. But at the moment she shrugs off Julian's hand, she feels a strange coldness in her stomach. It is not fear. It is the she-wolf waking up inside her, realizing that the herd only fears the one who is ready to bite the leader. Chapter 3. The Death of the Inner Witness and the Technology of Gaslighting 1. Phase, the Clash. Narrative, Boston. Research Center, Ethelgard Biotics. The laboratory is flooded with a deathly white light that reflects off chrome surfaces, creating the effect of an endless mirror corridor. Dr. Alistair Sterling, the head of the department, a man with the manners of an old aristocrat, stands at a panoramic window. His deputy, Dr. Emily Vance, stands in the center of the room. Emily knows for certain, yesterday at 10 o'clock in the evening, she completed the final testing protocol and saved it in an encrypted cloud. But this morning the folder is empty. Furthermore, the logs show that she did not even log into the system after lunch. Sterling turns slowly. His face expresses deep, almost painful concern. He approaches Emily, invading her personal space, and takes her by the hands. His palms are dry and hot, contrasting with the icy cold of the laboratory. "Emily, my dear, I am beginning to be seriously worried. We all saw you leave at 6 yesterday evening. You looked lost. Are you certain that your mental health is all right? The pressures at Ethelgard have broken even stronger people. What is he saying? I was here until 10 in the evening. I remember the taste of the coffee from the machine. I remember how my back ached. But why does the server say I was not here? He looks at me with such pity. Could I have really imagined this? Perhaps it is a hallucination brought on by stress. If I scream now that I was here, it will only confirm his words about my instability. Emily feels a cold lump growing in her chest. Her pupils dart chaotically across Sterling's face, trying to find even a shadow of a lie. But he is a master of sincere simulation. In parentheses, Sterling notices a micro-tremor of her lower eyelid. This is a signal that her confidence in reality has been shaken. He tightens his grip, suppressing her will through tactile contact. Rest, Emily. I will finish the protocol myself. Your hallucinations are merely a symptom of exhaustion. We will not tell anyone, he whispers, and his voice sounds like a sentence. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. This is gaslighting in its purest laboratory form. Sterling is not merely lying. He is constructing an alternative reality. The mechanism involved here is induced cognitive dissonance. When external information, the words of an authority and server logs, radically contradicts internal experience, the brain chooses the path of least resistance to avoid pain. It renounces its own experience. The physiology of betrayal. Sterling uses care to activate Emily's oxytocin system. Oxytocin, the hormone of trust, switches off the brain's critical filters. While her amygdala screams of danger, the prefrontal cortex, bribed by Sterling's kind tone, begins to suppress the alarm signals. Emily is literally undergoing a neurobiological hack. She ceases to be a subject and becomes a patient. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. To understand the mechanics of this suppression, let us turn to the Rosenhan experiment, 1973, known as On Being Sane in Insane Places. David Rosenhan and his colleagues simulated hallucinations to gain admission to psychiatric hospitals. As soon as they were diagnosed with schizophrenia, their subsequent perfectly normal behavior was interpreted by doctors as symptoms of the illness. If they kept a diary, it was called pathological writing. If they were angry at injustice, it was an aggressive psychosis. Emily is currently in the position of a pseudo-patient. Sterling has labeled her as unstable, and now any attempt by her to defend the truth will be viewed as a manifestation of her madness. The label dominates reality. 4. Phase. Counterstrike. The lesson. Friedrich Nietzsche proclaimed, "God is dead, and we have killed him." In the context of psychology, this signifies the death of an external authority of truth. Now, truth is that which you are capable of defending by force. Lesson number 3. Your memory is a battlefield. Never trust a caring enemy more than your own eyes. Strategic solution. Emily should have applied the tactic of external anchoring. Emotional sterilization. Immediately terminate the tactile contact. Step back. Sterling must cease to be a mentor and become an object of analysis. Radical fact-checking. Instead of arguing about her feelings, Emily should attack the technical side. Alistair, your concern is very touching, but it does not explain why at 9:45 I bought coffee from the machine that stands directly under the security camera in the hall. Either I am hallucinating along with the camera, or someone has hacked the log server. Let us watch the camera footage together, or would you prefer that I call the cyber police to investigate the system breach? This returns Emily's control over reality. She is not defending her psyche. She is attacking his crime. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. The laboratory smells of bleach and sterile plastic. The hum of the centrifuge in the background resembles the steady, indifferent noise of time that grinds down those who doubt. Sterling stands in a halo of white light, and his face seems like a mask made of plaster. But in his eyes, at the very periphery, Emily notices a barely perceptible dilation of the pupils. This is a surge of adrenaline. The predator has realized that the victim has not merely failed to break. She has begun to see right through him. The air in the room becomes thin, like in the mountains, where only those who know how to breathe the cold survive. Chapter 4. The Abyss and Shadow. Integration 1. Phase. The Clash. Narrative. Chicago. The private cigar club, the Iron Gate. Semi-darkness, the smell of expensive tobacco, and heavy leather furniture. Elias, a media tycoon and architect of other people's reputations, sits in a deep armchair. Opposite him is Thomas, an ambitious politician whose career is built on the image of the ideal family man and defender of morality. Elias slowly slides a black envelope toward Thomas. He does not open it. He simply places his palm upon it, demonstrating total control over the contents. Thomas, Elias's voice sounds low, with a barely noticeable vibration that hits directly in the solar plexus. Every saint has a past, and your past is currently under my palm. One photograph, and your white castle will turn into a heap of ashes. Thomas feels an icy void opening inside him. His pupils dilate, attempting to capture more light in the dimness of the room, which is a direct signal of the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. In parentheses, Thomas makes a micro-movement. He adjusts his tie. This is a gesture of self-cleansing, an attempt to wash off the filth he felt physically. Elias records this. The victim has acknowledged the presence of guilt. "What do you want?" Thomas forces out. His voice sounds dull, deprived of the overtones of power. "Oh, Thomas, I want you to become my voice in the Senate. You will sing the songs that I write, and in return I will allow you to continue wearing your mask of a saint." 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. Elias uses blackmail through the shadow. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the shadow is the collection of all qualities that we consider unacceptable. The more Thomas suppressed his dark impulses, the more power they have over him in Elias's hands. The physiology of social death. For Thomas's brain, the threat of exposure is equivalent to physical death. The mechanism of induced shame is switched on. Shame is the most destructive emotion because it strikes at identity. I am bad. At this moment, the dopamine reward system in the brain is blocked, and the person falls into a state of learned helplessness. Elias becomes for him an external superego, a god who decides whether Thomas has the right to exist. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. The science. To understand why people so easily betray their values under pressure, let us turn to the Third Wave Experiment, 1967, conducted by history teacher Ron Jones. Jones decided to demonstrate to his students how easily a fascist society could be created. He introduced strict discipline, slogans, and a sense of superiority. In just 5 days, ordinary teenagers turned into an aggressive group, ready to exclude and persecute anyone who did not meet the standard. This experiment proved, when membership in a group, or the maintenance of status within it, is at stake, people are ready to integrate the darkest patterns of behavior into themselves. Thomas is not afraid merely of exposure. He is afraid of being exiled from the pack of the elite. Elias uses this primal fear of ostracism to turn Thomas into his soldier. 4. Phase. Counter-strike. The lesson. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his work Beyond Good and Evil, wrote, He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Lesson number 4. Accept your abyss. Blackmail is powerless against the one who does not fear his own reflection. Strategic solution. Thomas should apply the principle of radical integration. Devaluation of the compromat. Instead of bargaining, Thomas must strip the information of its charge. Intercepting the initiative, Thomas must pull his shadow into the light himself. Elias, do you think you have frightened me with these pictures? You have forgotten one thing. I myself know who I am, and I am ready to acknowledge it publicly. Yes, I have committed errors, but I will make this confession a part of my campaign, as a story about a man who fell and rose again. Your envelope will turn into trash in an hour when I call a press conference. And now tell me, are you ready for me to tell how you tried to blackmail a senator? This returns to Thomas, his will to power. He does not protect the mask, he tears it off himself, becoming invulnerable to attacks from the outside. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. A thick, heavy silence hangs in the club. Only the steady ticking of the grandfather clock is audible, which seems like the pulsation of the abyss itself. The air is saturated with smoke that swirls around Elias, turning his figure into a dark silhouette. The light from the fireplace casts crimson highlights on Thomas's face, making him look like a demon from ancient engravings. At this moment, he feels a strange, almost ecstatic surge of strength. His pulse slows down. He is no longer running from his shame. He invites it to the table. And in this invitation is the beginning of his true power. Chapter 5. The Dancing Star and the Eternal Return One. Phase. The Clash. Narrative. A high mountain chalet in the Swiss Alps. Panoramic windows offer a view of lifeless, jagged peaks. Inside there is silence, broken only by the crackling of logs in the fireplace. Lord Sterling, the architect of world crises, and Julian, the man whom Sterling was preparing as his successor and his puppet, sit opposite each other. Sterling slowly pours whiskey of 50-year maturity. His movements are economical, like those of a predator who knows for certain that the prey will not escape. Julian, you have gone through everything. Silence, shame, gaslighting. You have survived. But now the final test. You must sign this document. It transfers control of your last asset to me. If you do this, you will become my right hand. If not, you will walk out of this room as a nobody. Sterling is not threatening. He is offering a deal with the devil, using positive reinforcement after months of torture. He wants Julian to put on the collar himself, calling it entry into the elite. He wants me to believe that this is my choice. This entire journey was merely a test of my readiness to serve. If I sign, I will receive the power I dreamed of, but this power will belong to him. My pulse is calm. I do not feel fear, I feel boredom. He has been repeating the same patterns for decades. He is locked in his cycle of dominance. Julian takes the pen. He looks at the paper but sees not the text, but the reflection of Sterling's face in the polished table. In parentheses, Julian notices how Sterling leans forward slightly. This is the vulture's tilt. Sterling craves the moment of capitulation. It is his only source of dopamine. He is addicted to the moment of another's fall. Julian slowly sets the pen aside and smiles, not politely, but coldly and aggressively. Alistair, you have offered me power, but you forgot to ask whether I need your power. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. Here we see a collision of reactive will and active will. Sterling is a reactive force. He lives by the negation and suppression of others. Julian is transitioning into a state of active will, the neurochemistry of freedom. Julian has broken the dopamine loop of dependence on Sterling's approval. His brain has stopped reacting to external stimuli of fear or reward. This state is called cognitive autonomy. When the prefrontal cortex takes complete control over the limbic system, manipulation becomes impossible. Sterling is trying to cause him cognitive dissonance, a choice between wealth and freedom. But for Julian, this choice no longer exists. He has gone beyond this dichotomy. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. To understand Julian's state, let us turn to Leon Festiner's Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, 1957. Festinger proved, when our beliefs collide with facts, we experience psychological discomfort and strive to eliminate it, often adjusting the facts to fit the beliefs. Sterling expected that Julian's thirst for power would force him to justify the betrayal of himself. But Julian applied radical honesty. He acknowledged that his thirst for power had been imposed by Sterling. As soon as the belief disappeared, the dissonance was resolved in favor of freedom. Also relevant here is the example from game theory, the prisoner's dilemma. Sterling offered Julian cooperation, the betrayal of oneself for mutual benefit. But Julian realized that in a game with a sociopath, the only winning move is to exit the game entirely. He chooses a third way that is not provided for by Sterling's rules. 4. Phase, counter-strike, the lesson. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Julian has accepted his inner chaos and his shadow. Lesson number 5, the principle of eternal return. Act in such a way that you would be ready to repeat this action an infinite number of times. Strategic solution. Julian applies the tactic of absolute refusal, devaluation of the aggressor's resources. Julian shows that everything Sterling offers, money, status, no longer holds value for him. A predator loses power when he has no bait left. Destruction of hierarchy. Alistair, look at yourself. You are an old man sitting in an empty house, waiting for someone to sign a piece of paper just to feel alive. I do not need your assets. I have already taken the most important thing. I have studied your methods, and now I will use them to dismantle everything you have built, not as your successor, but as your liquidator. This is the moment of the birth of the Overman, Übermensch. Julian no longer reacts to Sterling. He acts based on his own internal necessity. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. The air in the chalet becomes icy as the fireplace burns out. Outside the window, a blizzard begins, erasing the boundaries between the sky and the earth. Sterling sits in the shadows, and his face seems like a skull covered in parchment. Julian stands up. The sound of his footsteps on the oak floor is confident and rhythmic. He feels a strange vibration throughout his body. It is the joy of destroying the old self. He walks out into the blizzard without looking back. He is a dancing star at the center of his own chaos. Epilogue of the investigation. 5 principles of victory. We have completed the journey. 5 stories, 5 names, 5 lessons of dominance. 1. Chapter 1. Ethan/Liam. Own the silence. A vacuum is your space, not your torture. 2. Chapter 2. Evelyn. Shatter the mirror of approval. The crowd is merely a background for your will. 3. Chapter 3. Emily. Be your own witness. Gaslighting is powerless against recorded facts. 4. Chapter 4. Thomas. Accept your abyss. Shame is the fuel for your new power. 5. Chapter 5. Julian. The eternal return. Exit the game of another and begin your own. You are a psychologist. You know now that every attack on you is a neurochemical test, and now you have the keys to the laboratory. Knowledge of the mechanisms of the psyche is your primary freedom. Subscribe so that we may explore the hidden facets of human behavior together, and be sure to write in the comments which psychological pattern or strategy we shall dissect next time. Let us seek the truth together.